For me, there is a sense of wonder in this place. One can almost hear within it, reflected by its vaulted ceilings, the sound of Jewish prayer. For this was once the great synagogue of Toledo, and its memory of a flourishing Jewish life in Spain persists. That time is gone, but its bittersweet legacy lives on. By the 9th century, North Africa and Spain were in the hands of Muslim rulers. The Jews had followed the conquest of Islam across North Africa and into Spain. To the north, Christian Europe was beginning to awaken and was on the verge of profound changes. The cultures of three great faiths would meet on the continent of Europe. The Jews would join in the transformation of that continent and would themselves be transformed.
We who are of the remnant of Israelites are dwelling peacefully in this land of Spain, which is called in our sacred tongue, Sepharad. The land is rich, abounding in rivers, springs, and aqueducts. A land of corn, oil, and wine, and all manner of delicacies. It has pleasure gardens and orchards, and fruitful trees of every kind.
Grace, serenity, delicacy, artistry. Those are the words evoked by this patio of the Alhambra, the great Moorish palace of Granada, built in the 13th century. In these precincts, as in all of Andalusia, the southern part of Spain, for more than 2 centuries, Arabs and Jews lived together, side by side, bound to each other despite other differences by a common love of beauty and knowledge, poetry and music, art and philosophy. In Jewish history, despite intermittent waves of persecution and violence, that Spanish era is known as a golden age. The great wave of Muslim conquest that swept across North Africa had broken upon the shores of Europe, leaving Spain in the hands of Moorish rulers. Jews had followed in the wake of the Muslim conquests, joining in the development of new lands and sharing in the first great florescence of culture since the days of the Roman Empire. Arab civilization built upon a foundation laid by other cultures before it, among them that of the Jews. And in reaching outward to Greece and India and Rome, the Arab Renaissance synthesized a luminous vision of the world. In delicate patterns, the words of the Quran, the holy book of Islam, were carved upon the walls of Muslim palaces. Everywhere in a profusion of detail, beauty and faith were intertwined. In their search for order and beauty, the Arabs left a profound legacy for all time. The Arabs delved into the sciences and into mathematics. It was they who developed a system called in Arabic al-Jabr, algebra. They read the works of classical Greece and were enthralled, exploring in their own minds the paths and byways of philosophy. And in their age of greatest creativity, they tolerated and respected the ideas and beliefs of other peoples. By the 9th century, the vast majority of all Jews lived in Arab lands. They could hardly escape the influence of this new and energetic culture. In many of the lands of Islam, an ideal would emerge among the Jews of living and sharing in the larger society. nowhere was this ideal more fully realized than in the Muslim lands of Spain. Here in the great mosque of Cordoba, early in the 10th century, Abdul Rahman III established the independent caliphate of Muslim Spain and invited to his realm Arab poets and scientists, scholars and philosophers. Here the Jewish linguist and statesman Hasdai ibn Shaprut served in the court of Abdul Rahman and founded a Jewish court of his own. In so doing, he created a center of Jewish culture unique in the world of his time. A new world of Judaism would be born in this land, the world of the Sephardim, the Spanish Jews. Over the years, they would play a conspicuous part in the government, in the statecraft, and in the scholarship of Moorish Spain. Here in Granada, as elsewhere in Spain, the Sephardim rose to positions of great power. Here Samuel ibn Nagrela, a Jew, could become prime minister and commander-in-chief of the Moorish armies. His son Joseph would succeed him and plan, it is said, the construction of the great red palace, the Alhambra. It was a land of abundance, rich in opportunity, rich in possibilities. From the fruitfulness of Spain, the Moorish and the Jewish cultures drew sustenance, growing side by side and learning from one another. Despite moments of conflict, Jews across this land were free to work as farmers and physicians, artisans and statesmen, astronomers and diplomats. The Jews took inspiration from Arab literature and revitalized their ancient language, Hebrew. For centuries, it had been a language of worship only. In Spain, Hebrew was reborn in poetry and in song. The golden age of Muslim Spain would come to an end as the land broke into separate and warring kingdoms. But even in its final days, its remarkable vitality would find new expression. 3 centuries of the Golden Age resonate in the work of a single man, the greatest Jewish scholar of his time, Moses ben Maimon, better known to history as Maimonides. But to his people who revered him, he was and is known by other names. Rambam, the great eagle, to signify his soaring intellect, and most simply, the second Moses. Forced to flee from the turmoil of Spain, eventually he found refuge in Egypt. Intolerant, bustling Cairo, Maimonides, who would be remembered as a scholar, philosopher, and moralist, became first a mathematician, an astronomer, a physician. As one of the greatest physicians of his century, he was appointed to attend the Sultan Saladin. In the year 1199, he wrote to a friend and fellow scholar of his daily routine.
I dwell at Fostat. The Sultan's residence is in Cairo. Early each morning, I am obliged to visit him. When the Sultan does not feel well, or when one of his children or wives is ill, I cannot leave Cairo. If they are well, I return to my home in the afternoon, but never earlier. All the rooms are crowded with people. I treat them and dispense prescriptions. The coming and going of patients lasts until evening. When night falls, I cannot speak for exhaustion.
Within this routine, Maimonides managed somehow to write continuously 10 books on medicine alone. But it is not for his scientific works that he is best remembered, It is as the sage, the commentator, the wise man. In the synagogue of Ben Ezra, his synagogue, the mind and spirit of the second Moses are alive today. Maimonides searched out the heart of Jewish tradition and codified it in the Mishneh Torah. His contribution has defied the centuries and entered into the thought and life of all of Western civilization.
I wish to help the one worthy man out of his perplexity, to show him a way out of his confusion, so that he may attain perfection and peace.
In the greatest of Maimonides' works, The Guide for the Perplexed, he set out to examine Jewish religious beliefs in the light of philosophy, to reconcile faith and reason.
Let us say that whenever anything in the world seems absurd, ridiculous, or evil, it is because we have but a partial knowledge, and we want things arranged according to our taste and reason. But when we look at life and the world from the aspect of the eternal scheme of things, we will find that what seems to us bad and shocking does so only because of our lack of knowledge and wisdom.
The Guide for the Perplexed was one of the few books written by a Jew since biblical times to become part of world literature. In the closing days of the Golden Age, it was a beacon light that would illuminate the work of scholars of other faiths for centuries to come. But the age which had produced Maimonides was soon to vanish. Moorish Spain fell apart in the 11th and 12th centuries, and Christian armies from the north of the Iberian Peninsula launched a campaign of reconquest, in Spanish, the Reconquista. Over the next 400 years, they would drive inexorably southward and westward into Moslem Spain, until the Moors were forced to yield every piece of territory they had ever possessed. An era was ending for the Sephardic Jews. Moslem Spain was dying, and in its place there would now be a Christian land, joined to the Christian lands of Northern Europe.